The apartment wasn't mine. Not really. It belonged to Anton, technically. His name was on the lease, his furniture filled the rooms, his habits shaped the air. I was just the second tenant. Temporary, he said, until you find something better. I told him I wasn't in a hurry. It was a normal place. Third floor, narrow hallway, a kitchen that always smelled faintly like boiled pasta, even when nothing had been cooked for days. There was a window that didn't quite close, and when the wind came from the north, it made a low, steady hum. Not loud, just present. Anton said he didn't notice it anymore. He worked mornings, left at 7:40 every day, came back at 16:10 or 16:15, depending on traffic, though he insisted he didn't check the time that precisely. But he did. I could tell from the way he unlocked the door. Hesitation if it was earlier than expected, a longer pause if later. He liked things stable. That's what made it easy. At first, I didn't do anything intentional. I just observed where he placed his keys. Always the same spot on the small wooden table near the door, slightly to the left of center. Not perfectly aligned, but consistent.
His mug, blue, chipped at the rim. It stayed on the right side of the sink, even when clean. Shoes, parallel. Always parallel. Anton wasn't obsessive, not visibly, but he relied on quiet repetition, the kind people don't notice until it breaks. I didn't break anything. I adjusted. The first time, it was the keys. Just a little. 2 centimeters to the right. Not enough to look wrong, just enough to interrupt the motion of his hand. He came home, unlocked the door, stepped inside, reached without looking, and paused. I was in the kitchen, standing still, listening. A small silence. Then the faint scrape of metal as he picked them up anyway. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. The next day, I did nothing. Consistency matters more when it's interrupted irregularly. He came home, same routine. Keys exactly where he left them. His hand moved smoothly this time. No pause, but slower. Just slightly. On the third day, I moved them again. This time, slightly forward, toward the edge of the table. When he reached for them, one key slid off and hit the floor. A small sound, sharp. He froze. Not long, just enough.
Then he bent down, picked it up, placed them back carefully. Centered. More centered than before. "I think the table's uneven," he said later, casually. I nodded. It wasn't. It became a rhythm. Not daily, never predictable. Keys, mug, shoes. Always small adjustments, always within the boundary of plausibility. Anton started checking things more often. Not obviously, but he looked. That was the shift. There's a point where someone stops trusting their memory, but doesn't admit it. They compensate. Anton began aligning his shoes more precisely. He wiped the table before placing his keys down, as if dust might be the cause. He rinsed his mug twice. I didn't interfere with all of it, just enough. One evening, he stood in the hallway longer than usual. I was sitting on the couch, reading, or pretending to. "Did you move my shoes?" he asked. His tone wasn't accusatory, it was exploratory, like he was testing the idea out loud. "No," I said. "That was true. Not that day." He nodded. "Okay." He didn't press. That was important. The silence between questions is where things grow. I introduced something new in the second week. The chair. There was one wooden chair in the kitchen that he never used.
It stayed tucked under the table, slightly angled inward. I pulled it out. Just enough to be noticeable, but not disruptive. When he came home, he stopped in the doorway of the kitchen. I watched him from the corner of my eye. He looked at the chair, then at me. "Did you sit here?" he asked. "No," I said. He frowned. Not deeply, just a crease. Then he pushed the chair back in. The next day, I left it exactly as he had positioned it. The day after, I angled it outward. Not pulled out, just rotated. He noticed. Of course he did. He didn't say anything. But he stopped sitting at the table altogether. Patterns don't just break, they migrate. Anton started eating in his room. At first, occasionally. Then, consistently. The kitchen became quieter. The chair stayed where I left it. He stopped correcting it. That was new. I didn't expect that. I thought he would try to restore order. Instead, he avoided it. So I moved something else. The mug. I placed it in the cupboard. Not hidden, just not where it should be. He opened the cabinet, paused, then took it out. He held it for a moment, then placed it back in the sink. "You're using my mug?" he asked that evening. "No," I said. Again, true. I hadn't used it. He started marking things. Subtle at first. A small scratch on the table near where the keys should be. A faint line on the shelf where the mug usually rested. Invisible unless you knew where to look. He was trying to anchor reality. That's what people do. I adjusted accordingly. Not removing his markers, just shifting the objects relative to them. Keys placed just beside the scratch. Mug slightly offset from the line. Never contradicting completely. Just enough to blur. He began taking photos. I saw him once, standing in the hallway, phone held low, capturing the table. He didn't know I was watching. That complicated things. But not much. Photos don't help if the reference itself becomes unreliable. I changed the lighting. Not directly, just the bulb in the hallway. Slightly warmer. It altered the perception of shadows. The scratch on the table became harder to see in the evening. The line on the shelf faded under the new tone. He compared the photos. I could tell. He stood there, scrolling, looking back and forth. Confusion doesn't come all at once. It accumulates. "You're sure you're not moving things?" he asked one night. We were both in the kitchen. The chair was slightly out again. I hadn't touched it that day. Or maybe I had. It didn't matter. "Yes," I said. He looked at me for a long time. Not suspicious, just searching. "I think I'm just tired," he said finally. "Probably," I replied. That was the first time he suggested the explanation himself. I didn't correct him. The third week was quieter. I reduced the changes, let the uncertainty settle. He stopped asking questions, stopped marking things, stopped taking photos. But he started doing something else. He began resetting everything before leaving. Every morning. Keys centered, mug aligned, chair perfectly tucked, shoes parallel. He would stand there, look at everything, then leave, like he was sealing the room. I didn't touch anything during the day. That was important. Only after he returned. The difference between before and after became his focus, not the act itself. One evening, he came home earlier than usual. I was in the hallway. The keys were already moved. He saw me. Standing there, near the table. We looked at each other. Just for a second. "Did you just come in?" he asked. "Yes," I said. That was also true. He glanced at the keys, then back at me. "Okay," he said, and walked past. That was the moment things shifted. Not for him, for me. Up until then, it had been observational, controlled. But that look, brief, uncertain, it introduced something new. A possibility. He had almost seen it. So I made it clearer. The next day, I moved everything. Not dramatically, just enough that every object was slightly off. Keys, mug, chair, shoes, all within reason, all wrong together. When he came home, he stopped at the door. Didn't step inside immediately. He looked, longer than before. Then he entered, slowly, closed the door. Didn't take off his shoes. "You're messing with me," he said. Not a question. I was in the kitchen. "I'm not," I replied. He laughed. Short. Dry. "Okay," he said. He didn't fix anything. He just went to his room, closed the door. Silence. That night, he didn't come out. The next morning, everything was reset again. Perfectly. More precise than ever. I didn't change anything that day. When he came home, he went straight to the table, checked the keys, then the kitchen, then the chair. Everything was exactly as he left it. He stood there, waiting. Nothing happened. That was worse. He started staying up later. I could hear him moving at night, checking, listening. I stopped moving things for 3 days. By the 4th, he looked different. Not tired, just slower. "Have you noticed anything?" he asked. We were in the hallway. "No," I said. He nodded. Me neither. That was the first time he said it. That evening, I moved the keys again. Just slightly. The sound when they shifted, barely audible, but enough. He came out of his room immediately, faster than before. We stood in the hallway, facing each other. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He looked at the table, then back at me. "They moved," he said. I nodded. We both stood there, not moving. "Okay," he said quietly. He didn't touch them. He went back to his room, closed the door. After that, he stopped resetting things, stopped checking, stopped asking. The apartment became still. I didn't move anything anymore. There was no need. He adjusted. Keys left wherever they landed. Mug sometimes in the sink, sometimes on the table. Chair slightly out, always. Shoes no longer parallel. He stopped noticing. Or maybe he noticed everything. It's hard to tell the difference. One morning, he didn't go to work. He just sat at the table, looking at nothing. I passed by. He didn't look up. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Yes," he said. His voice was calm, almost familiar. "I think I just needed to stop fixing things," he added. I nodded. "That makes sense," I said. He smiled, slightly. That was the last conversation we had. He moved out 2 days later. No explanation, just a note on the table.
I found a place closer to work. He left the key. Not centered. I didn't adjust it. The apartment felt different after that. Not empty, just unstructured. I stayed. A new tenant came a week later. Her name was Liza. She asked where to put her keys. Anywhere, I said. She laughed. Placed them on the table. Slightly to the left, not centered. That night, I moved them. Just a little. She didn't notice. Not yet. I don't always start with the keys, but it's easier when I do.